Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney Flynn. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Catholic Mama. I once again have my husband wrangled in for another episode as my guest tonight, and we are going to talk about Santa Claus.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. No matter what time of year you are listening to this, I mean, I know my parents very strategically told me in the middle of the summer the truth about Santa. I should say that if you are listening to this with your children, you may want to stop and listen to this on your own time, just because, we're going to talk about some things that maybe go against the typical cultural agreement about Santa. Spoiler alert. Yes. Yeah. Spoiler alert. That's hard to say. Spoiler alert.
Well, I had a strawberry.
I know, but it's even hard. I'm trying to say it. My tongue is getting all tangled over that one. So this was a hard one. Pat initially was the one that broached the topic of maybe we don't do Santa Claus. And I balked at that at first. But then the more I thought about it, because I thought, we're going to be taking away the magic of Christmas for our children. But he had some very good arguments for it. And I would like him to talk about that in a minute. But also, I remembered that day in August, however old I was, that my mom sat me down and told me, and I was traumatized. Completely and utterly traumatized. And then she went on. I think she thought I was old enough that I would not have these feelings, but I did. And then she went on to let me know that all the other things that I thought were true, the Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, all this was also not true. And the reason she said she wanted to tell me at that point was leading into the holiday season, she wanted to be sure that I understood who the gifts were coming from so that I could be more appreciative. And now is the time. I would think that you should be instilling that in your children from the very beginning. But, Pat, why don't you know some of the more psychological reasonings behind why it's better? Possibly.
Mostly I was just traumatized too.
Well, you did some research into it, though.
Yeah. I think the first premise that we start with is that so far as we can help it, we shouldn't ever lie to our kids, because I can't draw a direct line from this. But as soon as I found out that my parents were lying about Santa, I wondered if they were lying about other things like Jesus or God. And that obviously wasn't good. I fell away from the faith for a very long time. So I'm not saying that's the reason I did it, but I'm saying that there was definitely a certain skepticism there that was unnecessary. If they were just upfront about the Santa thing to begin with. And since thinking about this, I haven't really been able to come up with any good reasons of why you should continue the Santa myth. I don't think that there's any major benefit that comes of it that can't be made up more meaningfully in other ways, especially in the long term. And we can get into some of those, like actually teaching them about Saint Nicholas, the real Saint Nicholas, or just playing pretend with Santa. There's no reason you can't still play pretend and still have a good time and have that joy of the chubby guy who comes down the chimney, and that's all fine and good. But it also tends to be a distraction for what Christmas really is about. Jesus and I get it. It's become kind of a secular thing like the Easter Bunny. But I mean, come on, give me a break. There's so many people who really think Easter is about a bunny who carries baskets around and leaves candy in it for people. So these distractions, I don't think, are particularly helpful for trying to raise confident kids with a really good, deep understanding of the faith. But at the same time, I don't think you have to be, really hard-edged about it or unreasonable either. I think there can still be a place for these traditions but they can be presented in a way where we're not intentionally misleading the children. So the biggest thing that made me think about this was first my own experience was once I realized that Santa wasn't real, it put in me doubt around many other things that my parents were telling me about. And those things tied into religion as well. And I really think that is an unnecessary thing to do. And I just haven't been able to think of any good reasons to continue on with the Santa myth, except for that it's just kind of the traditional cultural thing to do.
Right.
But
it's fun. The idea of Santa is fun. And, it's not – we made this decision, I think, when our son was 2. So we made this decision early enough that he didn't even know what was going on at Christmas anyway. So we were lucky in that aspect. It was really hard telling our families that we weren't going to do this. And even now, actually just today, and we're far away from Christmas, our son said, "Oh, I wish Santa could be real." And I said, "Yeah, that would be nice. But St. Nicholas was real. We can play pretend that Santa's real." Just because you don't lie to your kids about Santa doesn't mean that the holiday becomes less magical, less special, less, you can still build a very fulfilling childlike memory for your kids around Christmas with all the food and the presents and the music and everything you want to do. It can all happen. You can still set up, like my brother and I did, a little Santa watch in the bedroom closet and listen to is it NORAD who does the Santa tracker? Anyway, somebody does a Santa tracker and you can hear where Santa is and you can track him on the computer. All that fun. You can still do all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just that the kids know it's a game. But it is, our kids are still pretty young, so it can get confusing for them still at the holidays when people ask, "Are you ready for Santa to come?" So, I have a couple of strategies that we can talk about how to deal with the outside influences if you choose to go this route. And if you haven't gone this route, but you have older kids, you're not quite ready to tell them. I don't know. We have some ideas for that as well. So I don't know if there's.
Well, just one more thing I would say, and I don't know if there's been any studies done on this specifically about Santa, but usually when it comes to child psychology, if there's something that you withhold the truth of, especially if it's something significant, like if a kid has a severe disease, possibly even a terminal disease, right? If you tell them later, it's a lot more traumatizing. But if they know right away from the beginning, then it isn't as traumatizing. Sometimes it's not traumatizing at all. Now, it depends on other factors as well. But the general rule psychologically is tell the truth as early and as often as possible when it comes to your children. Obviously Santa isn't a terminal disease. maybe of the culture, but I think we've made the right decision here. It wasn't necessarily it was an easy decision for me because I was really rattled from the Santa thing when I was a kid.
It was an easy decision for you?
It was an easy decision for me to not want to perpetuate the Santa myth.
I gotta say it's made Christmas easier.
Yeah.
I had to say, I've been able to enjoy the holidays more without feeling like I'm sneaking around. That's just an extra layer of unnecessary stress when the holidays are so full anyway, and also puts the holiday back on the right focus.
Yeah. And I think we've done a fairly nice job of, when I say we, mostly you.
Yes, thank you.
You are the specialist when it comes to making holidays feel magical, look magical, of keeping those nice, fun, traditional elements, but also making it deeply religious and significant at the same time.
Yeah, it's not to say that the Christmases of my childhood were completely focused on Santa either. When you said magical and Christmas, it reminds me, my mom is the queen of making Christmases magical. We call it the magic of Christmas because every year she does this whole elaborate Christmas Eve dinner and theme, and it's really, really special. We go and watch or look at Christmas lights and drive around, listen to music. It wasn't all about let's get presents from Santa, but when you are lied to about that, we think that it undermines the confidence that we can have in our children's mental abilities and emotional abilities. They're much smarter typically than we give them credit for. And if you are a parent, you notice that there's times where your kids say something like, whoa, wow, you're so smart. I didn't even think about that. So just think how that translates in their abilities to understand Santa and any of the other little white lies that we tell to our kids. We mean well, but the end result might not be such a good thing. And even without, Santa aside, I think we've been taking that same idea of being as honest as possible with our kids. It means that we have to answer a lot of questions, and we have to think about it. It's not just, just because I said so, that's just the way it is. There's a lot of thinking that has to go into the answers that we give our kids, but I'd rather equip them with, an ability to reason and think than just an easy fix for me because I'm tired or stressed.
Well, it's good for us too. Kids ask the most philosophical questions, so it certainly is a worthy challenge.
Yes, you know what? So today in the car, and we can get back to Santa in a second.
Or not. All right.
Done.
We finished him off.
Don't worry about him. Just tell your kids no. It's done. Our son asked me, who borned God?
Who born to God?
Who born God? And I told him after answering that God has always existed.
Unless he's talking about Mary.
I think he was talking about the creator of the universe, not Jesus. But then, yes, that would have also
not the second part of the triune God.
Oh my God, that would have really. I didn't even get in that
part. Try and dissect the Trinity for him. Yeah,
he's asked that already.
Yeah, well, that one is a much murkier question. That's tough. What's the old thing about? I think it was St. Patrick who said was a story of him in the Trinity. Some kid was scooping water out of the ocean with a bucket. He was throwing it on the sand, and St. Patrick was like, "What are you doing? You're never going to finish that." And he's like, "I'll finish it before you figure out the Trinity."
Well, you know what? And I put this in. So I have an ebook on thecatholicmama.com, and it's about helping you figure out how to talk to your kids about God. And then also it has 7 the trickiest questions that you may be faced with. And one of those was about the Trinity. And I read something that it really hit home. And I wound up using it the other day because we were baking and I had the kids cracking an egg. But before we did, I said, do you see this? What's a part of the egg? And they said the eggshell. And then we cracked it open. I said, what do you see there? The yolk and the white part of the egg. And I said, okay, so what 3 parts are the egg? The yolk, the white, and the shell. I was like, is it an egg if it's just the yolk? No. Is it an egg if it's just the white? No. Is it an egg if it's just the shell? No. You need all 3 things in one to be God.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah.
So it's not mine, but I read it and I liked it. And now we're using it.
Well, you've credited it once.
I've credited it once. I don't know where I read it, but I did read it someplace else. But yeah, so it is possible to explain these things.
Yeah.
And they are willing to listen. And, every time I answer a question well enough, either I always ask, do you understand? And sometimes it's no, and we have to go further.
Sometimes they will think that God is an egg yolk.
Or an egg yolk, which, he's in everything.
Which is fine. We can work through that. But yes, back to Santa. We'll come back to the Trinity many times, yes. I'm sure. The last thing that I wanted to say about Santa Claus is, was there a last thing? But that might be it. I mean, the biggest things for me was both my personal experience and then really kind of weighing the pros and cons of, if we just upfront Santa isn't real, what are we really losing from that aside from a literal delusion? And I can't really think of anything. Pretend is still fine. Yeah, you might want to think Santa is real, but our son also wishes that Lightning McQueen was real too.
Yeah.
You just always, I wish that 0-calorie waffles were real.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too.
But it wouldn't help me to eat a bunch of waffles thinking that there were no calories in them. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh.
Now I want waffles. That's it. We're cutting the show short so I can go make waffles.
But, the delusions, again, I don't want to be harsh. Santa and delusion, that is a little direct of language. Obviously, no parent is trying to feed their kid an act of delusion. They're doing it with good intentions. They think it's going to be fun. I just remember just how shattering it was when I found out. I remember who told me. It was my friend Bo. We're going to his wedding in October. We can reconcile it there. I'm going to dump it on him. Like, you ruined this for me, man.
Make a speech at the wedding.
And there's always going to be that kid who goes around and it's in like whatever, first or second grade, who his mission is to tell all the kids that Santa isn't real. You're never that kid is always going to exist. He's only going to be there. Now, hopefully, well, or maybe not. I don't know if that kid's doing a public service at this point, but
maybe. So I have some ideas about that, so that your kid does not become that kid, because it's up to everybody can choose how they want to raise their kids, and you don't, if you are a parent that decides that they don't want to tell their kid until they're 15 that unicorns aren't real and Santa Claus isn't real and all that stuff, that's fine. But if you do want to raise your kids with, without thinking that these things are real, you don't want to ruin anybody else's childhood. And you also want to, it's not even just ruining that aspect. It's also, teaching your kids to be respectful of others' beliefs, even if they aren't correct. So I read this book that I found off of one of my Facebook groups that I'm part of. It was Montessori. It's a type of more realistic education type philosophy. And it's called The Wonderful Truth About Santa. And it's a story about a grandson asking his grandfather about the truth about Santa. And so the grandfather tells the child the original story about St. Nicholas, where that story came from, how it grew into what it is today. The main point that I took away from this that I thought was really special is saying that no matter how, that feeling that you get when you give a gift or get a gift, it's this warm feeling. That's the spirit of Christmas. And you don't want to be the person to blow out or snuff out another person's Christmas spirit until it has burned bright enough to last them a lifetime. Now, I'm always crying at this point in this book because I'm always crying now that I'm a mom. But it just having that, and then also saying, in the book, it does say, hey, if you're out in the store or whatever, and somebody's asking you, are you ready for Santa Claus to come? What are you doing to get ready for Santa? It's a game. It's just a game. We're all just in on a little game. So you don't want to, you don't know who's in on the game. Just go along with it. Because do you really want to sit in a grocery store and explain to the cashier who just very nicely asked your kids, are you ready for Santa Claus? Like, no, I'm sorry. We don't do Santa.
We're not doing Santa.
That's just going to be a downer for everybody. Just go along with the game. It's all in good fun. And then that way your kids get into the habit of not ripping somebody else's beliefs in shreds and ruining some child's Christmas, 2 weeks before.
Is that what we're doing? Because I've been actually confronting the cashier.
Those poor cashiers. Yes. So that's what we've been doing for the past 2 years. I bought this book, I think, or this might be the second Christmas. And it comes out with all the other Christmas books about Frosty the Snowman or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, all the other ones. This one just comes out and I make sure that we read it several times when it's my choice of what book we read. That's the one I pick during the holidays, just so that it becomes ingrained in there. So
I think we've hopefully made a at least convincing, if not entirely compelling case of why you should maybe lead with the truth about Christmas and Santa and all that. But maybe, and I'm just kind of setting it up for you here, a few more tips to bring the magic into Christmas and to really make the most of the holiday season, both for the adults and the kids. What do you got for us?
Oh, wow. I think, it's similar as when you go to Mass and all your senses are engaged in some way. You're hearing certain things, you're speaking certain things, you have the Eucharist. If the incense is going, you smell that. There's you're engaging all of your senses. So if you're trying to make the holidays magical, whether it's Christmas or Halloween, whatever it is just trying to fulfill all those senses. So, have the music on, the house smells good, You're watching Christmas movies and things as a family, and undermining all of this not undermining, underlining all of this with why we're doing this. This is a magical, wonderful time of year for a really big reason. And, in the past, I remember before when I was very anti-religion, be like, why do we have to bring God into this? God, it's so icky. It was fine. Christmas is fine. Santa's just fun. Santa's fun. And the holidays should be fun. This is but it's fun and magical for a very specific reason. So just making why the reason for the season kind of just a everyday conversation topic here and there. Not that you have to force it down anybody's throat, but if you look for those opportunities to speak about God, they do come up with your kids pretty easily. You can easily just slip in conversation, parts of conversations about this.
They're incessantly curious with their questions about God.
It shows how primal this need to know God really is. When you hear children who, again, Pat and I weren't doing this. We were not religious up until very, relatively recently. So it's not like our kids have been listening to us do this since they were born. We haven't. This is pretty new, and but they've always asked. Mm-hmm. It's made the answers much easier on my end. Instead of before, I was reading a book, and it mentioned church or God or something, consciousness. I can't remember what book I was reading to the kids. It was a children's book. But either way, I remember I skipped over whatever the part about God, I skipped over at first because I was like, this isn't us. What am I supposed to do with this? It's a fine book otherwise. But even when I skipped over that part, it doesn't matter. The kids ask questions. They want to know, as we all do.
That's good. So big points, tell the truth early and often, even when it comes to Santa, and you can still make Christmas magical. Yes.
And, if you are already, eyeballs deep in Santa being real in your household, look for ways that you can start to infuse the truth about Christmas and the truth about Santa, even if you're not ready to tell your kids. I think that you should and give them that opportunity to be appreciative of who's really doing all the work at the holidays. And also be appreciative of why we have this holiday. We're not celebrating the winter solstice. Mm-hmm. It's not, yes, it coincides, and maybe the timing may have worked a certain way because people were trying to convert. I don't know the validity to those claims, but there is a specific reason for it. And you can start infusing that if you aren't already into just the everyday conversations during that time, even just I gotta say, this past Christmas, Pat, you bought one of those little gift box novelty gifts at the front of Barnes and Noble on the way out. And it was a nativity set. Mm-hmm. And it was this little cheap wooden nativity set. We set it up. And how many questions? All of a sudden, our daughter was holding the baby Jesus and toting him around and just loving him. Even still, we have it out. We left it out all year because it became a favorite toy. So just having these things in your house. Your kids will pick up on it and ask questions and maybe let them lead the way because they will lead you. They are insatiable and curious at all times.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming back. I'm excited about this. This is good. So good luck about Santa.
You got some time. That's why we did this episode going in summer. Gives you some time to prepare.
Right. Again, I was told in August and I was still heartbroken by Christmas. But secular household, I didn't have any other reason to really, be rooted in the holiday besides Santa was the reason for the season at that point. So, if you're coming from a religious household, maybe that's not the case, but look for ways that you can infuse Jesus more into the holidays and still make it magical because of Jesus. God came on earth at Christmas. That's what we're celebrating. So when you bake cookies, you're baking it in celebration of this. When you have Christmas music on, and make sure that when you listen to Christmas music, you are listening to the religious ones. There's some beautiful ones. I grew up listening, even though I was, secular household, but all the old classics, Andy Williams and Bing Crosby, and they have beautiful voices, and they sang very beautiful religious Christmas songs as well. So look for ways to involve all the senses in your holidays. Not doing Santa causes a lot less stress and hiding of things. and also doesn't feel like, oh God, that we only have a certain amount of time before we have to tell them the truth. Elf on the Shelf, dude, I don't even know. Don't do that. Never do Elf on the Shelf. Do you know what that is?
No. Mm-mm.
Good.
Keep it that way.
Keep it that way. All I've heard is from horror stories and the stress that people have to do. So, no Elf on the Shelf. Tell your kids the truth about Santa. Make things magical. You can do it. Don't forget to head over to thecatholicmama.com to get your free copy of How to Talk to Your Kids About God. This handy little ebook will teach you how to broach the topic of God with your children, or how to respond to your kids when they want to talk about God, as well as give you answers to 7 of the trickiest questions about the faith that Christian parents face. You'll love the easy-to-understand grown-up answers, the pared-down but not talked-down answers you can share with your kids, plus recommended resources if you'd like to deepen your understanding of the topic. Get yours free at thecatholicmama.com.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.